Hello everyone and welcome back to the Something Green Virtual Wedding Fair, brought to you by North London Waste Authority. So all day we've been talking about how you can plan a more environmentally friendly wedding, which is something which has become really important for couples. They did a survey quite recently and found out that newlyweds are twice as likely to try and do something sustainable as those who are already married. So we are here with all of your top tips for how you can have a more sustainable wedding. And I'm here with Emma Chandler from Unwined. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're so welcome.
So today we're going to be talking about how people can choose some slightly more sustainable wines, either natural and organic wines, and maybe even what those mean, because I don't think a lot of people know. And then I've got some of your wines here to taste, as well as some non-alcoholic options as well. So can you just tell me, for a starter, how did you get into wine?
My personal story was that I moved to Tooting in southwest London, which is where the first Unwined bar started out, and just basically fell in love with it. It's in a really funky market called Tooting Market, if anyone's familiar with it. It's really kind of like a life and soul of the area, I feel. And just the way that we pull together wines based on stories, the way we serve, you don't have to have any prior knowledge, just enjoy it based on stories and themes and changing it. I just fell in love with it, and it just clicked and fitted, and I ended up leaving my other job to go full time with this, and now we do events and things as well. We've got a second bar in Waterloo as well. Just a really small, wonderful, dedicated team that's kind of made me fall in love with that as well as wine itself.
I'm going to have to go and visit because my office is not very far from Waterloo, and I'm always looking for somewhere new to go, so I'll drop in.
Oh yeah.
When
It's a
we're
really
allowed.
fun area. Yeah, on Lower Marsh. It's a really fun area of London, almost kind of like a little secret little area. It's really super fun. And obviously opening it up again soon. So that's perfect timing.
And I wonder, I think a lot of people, I mean, just in their day-to-day lives, but I guess also choosing wine for a wedding, might not realise that there are more sustainable options for wine, or even that there's any issues with kind of wine production in terms of its environmental footprint.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of, without trying to burst anyone's bubble here, but there's that romanticized idea, I think, of wine where it's just, squeezing some grape juice in a bottle. Here I am with my chateau looking over the vineyard. It's actually not the story for a lot of wines. Some wines are really super mass produced, and you can actually add quite a lot of preservatives and additives and kind of flavor enhancing yeasts and bits and bobs like that to wines, especially the bigger brands and en masse stuff. So that does kind of ruin that, romantic idea, unfortunately. However, as you say, there are so many amazing, super inspiring, smaller production winemakers. A lot of them who, this is what made me fall in love with wine, right? Is with their stories and their love of what they do. And it's so amazing that like we as a bar can support that to still happen, but also tell that story with all of the people at the bars too. So yeah, there's loads and loads out there if you just kind of go and search it. And they are, as I will talk a little bit more about it, they put love into the soil, into the grapes, and then of course into the wine, and then how it then tastes to you.
I'm really excited to get a chance to try some of these. People are starting to have a look around. I think it can be quite confusing because I've kind of had a little look at it because I work in the sustainability space. So I've had a look at, can I buy smaller scale wine? Should I be looking at natural? Should I be looking at organic? And what do all of these words actually mean? Because I think it can be difficult to tell, what's really sustainable and what might just be a label that says sustainable.
It's a tricky one. I think labeling laws, like you might see a wine that says organic on the label. And as with our final wine today, he works completely organically, but he's not actually organic certified because as a small producer, it costs so much to go through the certification hoops. He hasn't actually gone down that route. But it takes a bit more homework, unfortunately, but you can check on their websites and things like that to check their sort of sustainability tick boxes and if they work organically, even though they might not be, they might not say in huge letters on the label organic. But the best thing to do is just think about your connections locally. If you are lucky enough to have a small scale local sort of wine bar nearby, ask them for some advice and some support, get to know some producers and things like that to try something new. And what I know, I'm very aware that a lot of people find the wine world quite intimidating. I was that person as well, kind of still am, there's still so much to learn. So why not just start having that journey with step number one, and then just it's fun. You're just tasting wines, right? There's no right or wrong. It's just a fun journey to get down and ask those questions, do that little bit of research, and all the while you're having some nice wine along the way. So yeah, it is available. Just got to do a little bit more research, I suppose. But talk to if you have a local wine shop.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's going to be my next question, actually, for people who are buying wine for a wedding and possibly, for the first time having to buy wine in bulk, for people who have lots of different kind of palates and trying to find something that works for everybody. If you have any advice for people who maybe just aren't sure where to start.
Yeah, well, that brings me on to wine number one, really. So that was beautiful timing. Well, let's pour this first wine, and remember that point, I'll come back to it. So pour your first wine number one, and hopefully this might be helpful for everyone when you do perhaps think you're thinking about buying some bottles to do a little tasting, see what you like, see what you think everyone will like you say, you're planning for many palates. So to get the most out of a wine, I've got a couple of tips for tasting for you. All right.
Oh, thank God. Okay. Yeah, I'm a total novice, so you can teach me.
Absolutely. Anyone's welcome. Total novice all the way up to pro. It's all good. All right. So once you poured your wine, it's very interesting. You can start telling, I'm on red, you're on white, but you can start telling a lot about a wine just by looking at the color. So white wines go darker with age, red wines go lighter. Like with a red wine, sometimes they're more purpley, sometimes more ruby red. And if they're deeper in color, they're probably going to be fuller in body as well, like that bigger body. So yeah, starting to kind of analyze it just by looking at it. Then, most important tip, actually with wine tasting, it starts with your nose. So even though you might feel a bit silly doing it, give your glass a good swirl and a good sniff. That's where your tasting journey starts, right? So give it a good swirl. I see you.
This is always the embarrassing bit in a restaurant where you go, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing.
No, I know. And this is where like I hate when people feel like silly, and this is honestly where the flavors, basically what you're doing, you're adding oxygen into the glass that wakes up those flavors. Have a good sniff, and that's where the flavors start. It might be different to how it tastes. Who knows? If it does, it might not give you much at all, in which case it's quite a subtle wine, which probably isn't going to make anyone too sad. It's not a bad idea. Or if it's like completely nothing, then there's probably no point in buying that one. So what are you getting with this one? Any kind of
It smells really nice. Yeah, it smells kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like acidy, like there's something like a note over the top of it.
Citrus fruits, like kind of lemony. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, really fresh.
I'm a wine taster now.
Pro, well done. And next up, of course, tasting. Now, when you are tasting a wine, the only tip I have for you is let your whole mouth taste it, because you actually taste different things in different parts of your mouth. So give it a little swirl around, but not exactly like mouthwash. Be a little bit softer. And then you'll hopefully get a full picture with your swirling and sniffing and your little taste. And hopefully you'll get a full picture of what this wine's trying to do. The wine settled down now after it's had its little bit of a swirl, and you should get an idea of what the wine's trying to give to you. And if you do that with all throughout your little wine tasting, you should be able to make a good choice.
I think it's a really good point, because I'm sure a lot of people for their weddings go to these tastings and maybe do feel a bit embarrassed, or they're not quite sure where to start, so maybe don't get as good as an experience as they would otherwise.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be, you don't have to know loads and loads, but you want to try and be able to taste it, right? And so don't yeah. So that's to get your taste buds tingling, and kind of talking about wines that will suit lots of people that haven't got any. Some people get a bit funny about oaking wines, or really extra high acidity wines, or a few things like that, too floral, things like that. Now this is a grape variety called Vermentino. Now it's famous in Sardinia. More sort of Italian variety. You find it in the south of France as well. But this is where I'm talking about local. If you can get local connections with a local wine shop, then you're surely going to find something funky and interesting. Now, this is your special day, right? So you want something unique. And this surely does have a unique label as well. Now, so there's Vermentino, but this is from Australia, which is all pretty unique already. They've got quite a lot of Italian varieties in Australia, which is something that this guy called Con Greg, who's the winemaker, only links up with Italian grape growing families in Riverland in Australia. But this is fresh and crisp and citrusy. It's going to be great with just as like kind of like an aperitif side of things, or something really great with cheeses. It'll cut through that cream. So when you are tasting these wines, think about what you might be serving as well, and what will go well with the food, because when you add food to it too, you're adding a whole third element, which can be really, really amazing. Or if you get the pairing slightly wrong, you might lose a flavor here or there, either in the wine with a strong food, or in the food if you have a strong wine and a subtle food. So yeah, that's something else to kind of put in the back of your mind. Again, it doesn't have to be scary. It's just fun. This journey is meant to be fun.
I think it comes quite naturally as well, because definitely tasting that, I know it's a dry white wine. I could taste that it was like super crisp and super fresh, and I was like, okay, I'm in a spring garden, and
Yes.
I'm eating a salad. Like, I already had that kind of experience when I was tasting it. So I think people, it's probably going to be easier for people than they think it might be.
Amazing. Yeah, no, absolutely. And also this whole idea of thinking local. So local wine bars are obviously, especially small independent places that are really needing your help right now. It's been a really crazy year. Then go and ask them all the questions, see what advice they have. And if they can supply you for your wedding, then brilliant. That local connection is fantastic. But also think about UK wines as well. I think we sometimes are guilty of forgetting that we are actually a wine producing country now, and we are doing really, really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you happen to have a vineyard or a winery near to you, or you want to make a trip to kind of try out some locally made wines as well, then how amazing would that be? I know even some wineries and vineyards actually do weddings too, so that would be, yeah, an incredible thing to kind of.
Do you have any favorite English wines that you could maybe get people to start on? Because I think a lot of people are maybe a bit reticent to try English wines for the first time.
Yeah, two that we've been working with quite a lot. Our favourite one is called Hennes. They do sparkling wine mostly. They're in Hertsmanzoon, Sussex. And their sparkling wine is just incredible. It's the same grapes as you'd have in Champagne, but they age it for about 4 years. So it's just absolutely beautifully toasty and sort of like that decadent loveliness that you get from a fizz. But yeah, it's only about 7 hectares. And yeah, so sort of quite small production stuff, but yeah, really special, yummy sparkling wine. So that's really great. Another one that we use at the moment is called Newhall. That's in Essex. So you might not think Essex. Oh yeah, winemaking. So it can really surprise us. A great variety to look out for in the UK is Bacchus. It's actually the Greek god of wine, I think the name is from.
Yeah.
It's actually a German variety, but does well. And the colds, of course, we're a cool climate, so we can do well with sparkling wines that need it a bit chillier, and also white wines tend to do better in the cold too. So, yeah, definitely one to look out for.
And as well as that idea of kind of thinking local and looking at local wines or small scale producers, you were talking earlier about the way that these wines are produced. They're not just thinking about the wine, but you're thinking about the soil, you're thinking about all these other things. And I wonder if you could give people at home a little bit of an idea of what that is.
Yeah, so kind of like looking at these labels, like organic, biodynamic is another one as well. The idea being, it's kind of like if you were going to go to the local farmers market and buy your carrots, or the organic carrots in the supermarket. It's kind of that same idea as how you produce the grapes and then there's no chemical fertilizers and pesticides, herbicides, that sort of thing. So none of those chemical sprays on the grapes or on the soils. As little, so yeah, that's that thing. Maybe then you're thinking more about natural manures and thinking more about a circle of life side of things. So you might have a working farm alongside your vineyard. You might have things like chickens to eat the bugs away. You might have sheep that come and eat the grass rather than, spraying the grass away with chemicals and things. This whole idea that actually it's much better to work in a kind of a cyclical circle of life idea, rather than like, here's my monocrop of grapes, let's just spray it all to make sure there's no bugs around idea. Which does mean that it's obviously quite a lot more work, usually on a smaller scale. It might affect the price, but depending on where you get it from, it might not. But it's definitely better for the soils. And the soils, if anyone's a gardener out there, will know if you don't look after your soils, how on earth are you going to grow great vegetables? It's the same idea with growing grapes. Now, if you look after your soils will look after your grapes, and then the job's half done. You've got great grapes, you're going to almost certainly have great wine, right? So then in the winery, the other half of the production side is that you might want to use as little sulfur as possible. Now, sulfur or sulfites is quite a lot, it's talked about quite a lot. I think people sometimes are quite sensitive to sulfites, and people think, oh, and I get hangovers and things. Well, there's different rules in different countries, and there's even kind of slight rules within the label of organic. But just the general idea is to use as little sulfur as possible. Now, sulfur is a preservative. There's preservatives in all sorts of foods as well. You have it in wine. The idea is that it makes sure that the wine as that product is the same as when it leaves the winery as to how it then arrives to you in your glass. But some people have an idea of actually you want the wine to develop still. You don't want to kind of kill it there and then. You want it to still develop little by little over time in bottle, maybe over years, and then it will develop into something different. You don't want to kill it just there and then. So if you have that kind of concept, then that's important. The idea of biodynamics is kind of like organic plus. That's when you're not just treating your soils well and not using pesticides. It's you're actually using the cyclical cycle of the moon to know when you're going to harvest, to irrigate, to pick, to plant, all these sorts of things. There's other few kind of things as well that goes into it. I could talk about it for hours.
I love it.
Yeah.
Like what you're talking about is that kind of, intensive versus more traditional methods, which I think people are starting to wake up to in food.
Absolutely.
Certainly, I think people are a lot more familiar with the idea of, organic farming, biodynamic farming than they might be in wine.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, wine, although it's sitting here in a beautiful bottle, it starts with farmers in the fields as a fruit, so let's not forget that kind of thing. Just like when you're buying your organic carrots and they taste great.
It's the same thing. And then what I have to talk about, because I know people watching will be thinking about it, is the price. So I know a lot of people, when they go and buy wines, they'll be buying the offers that you can get in supermarkets, so you get 6 bottles for less money and store them up over the time until they get married. And for some people, I think they might be put off at the idea of going local or going independent, maybe stop them even researching it because they think it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah, but this is why I say it's definitely worth making those connections with a local wine bar that has connections with suppliers. If you're buying a large enough amount of it, then there's no reason necessarily why they couldn't sort of try and work out a deal that works for them as well as you. If you know that you can then kind of tick that sustainability box, tick the local box, support a smaller producing wine maker, but also support a smaller business wine shop, then everyone's winning really there, aren't they? So if that is an option for you, it's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And I think this whole thing, that the kind of theme throughout the day has been, ask questions. Don't be afraid to go and meet the producers and find people who are making things, and because they've got more information than you have, and they'll be able to help you work out costs and help you work out what's best for you.
And chances are they're really passionate about it as well, so they'll want to talk to you back. So
and then you can have a delightful conversation like this. I'm aware that we've got about 10 more minutes left, so if you guys have any questions for Emma, please feel free to comment them and I'll come to them at the end. But now I wonder if it's time to try wine number 2.
Definitely pour wine number 2. And just kind of this is the thing about with this tasting element, and give it a swirl and a sniff, give it a good taste, to see how different it is, because this one, hopefully you'll find, is totally different to the first one.
You're going to cure me of my fear of sniffing.
Yeah, do it.
That actually smells amazing.
But different, right? Because it's like fuller. There's more kind of intensity in the flavors.
That's so nice. Yeah, that definitely has got, again, I don't know anything about wine, so excuse my terrible words, but it's got a fuller flavour.
Yeah. It kind of shouts at you but through your nose.
That is incredible. What wine is that?
Okay, so this is probably one of our definitely mine favorite producers from South Africa, an incredible country for wine. They have a lot of funky producers doing different things. New World is not necessarily as restrictive as some of the old world countries. This guy's called Peter Volser. His winery is called Blank Bottle, and there's a great fun story about how don't judge a wine based on the grape variety that's written on the label. He's got like insight into this, but we're very guilty of judging something before we taste it. Now, him with this blank bottle idea is he doesn't want anyone judging his wine until he's tasted it. So, and yeah, he does lots of kind of more fuller bodied whites. That's what he likes. But he's a very unique way of making it. He makes like 42 different wines a year and not doesn't always repeat it. Very interesting. And again, looking at these kind of quirkier stuff, you've got Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, and Riesling in this blend. Very
Wow.
unusual blend. You don't usually have Riesling blended or Sauvignon Blanc blended, really. So yeah, and it's a small production, which is what you really do taste the difference in small production stuff. Imagine it if you were to make, I don't know, cakes at home. If you were to make one cake, you put your heart and soul into it, don't you? If you were to make 1,000 cakes, how do you put your heart and soul into decorating 1,000 cakes? So it's the same kind of idea is here with he really puts his heart and soul into each one of his small production wines for sure.
That idea of experimentation and getting something which is maybe a little bit different and a little bit more unique, I think will appeal to lots of people. And I definitely do that. Like, I think that I've been given a glass of Chardonnay before, even though I would never buy it in a shop because I think that I don't like it. And I've been given glasses and go, oh my God, what's that? And I'm
Yeah,
shocked when
yeah,
someone
yeah.
tells me it's a Chardonnay. So these kind of preconceptions that we have about things.
Oh, we think we know a lot about something when actually it's best just letting our taste bud do the talking, honestly. So yeah, they know best.
Someone has just asked a question. It's kind of something we've already covered, but asking if sustainable wines are more expensive. So if you're still watching, whoever asked that question, we talked about it earlier and actually decided that going and speaking to a producer and making a relationship with them means that more often than not, you'll find a deal that works for you and works for them. So, you know, building these relationships with people and being able to have conversations about what you're buying at a large scale means that you can probably save a little bit of money. Should we do wine number 3 so that we can finish
Yeah,
them all before we come to the end?
definitely. Well, wine number 3, getting carried away myself. We're moving on to reds, of course. I mean, something for everyone, right? This is an amazing story. It's a wine called Gran Cerdo. It's an unoaked Rioja. Rioja
Oh,
being the region in northern Spain, famous for Tempranillo grapes. His whole idea is that he wanted to do something different. Wouldn't get a bank loan though given to him, so he did it his own way. Gran Cerdo meaning big pigs. So yeah, he is his crunchy red fruits, dark fruits, bit of spice. And this is the guy that I was telling you about who isn't actually certified organic, but he does work within organic production methods. So it's definitely worth kind of checking in on how things are made, as it doesn't always tell you blaringly on the label, check me out, I'm sustainable, or I am organic, because there are actual expensive hoops to kind of go through to get certified.
and that's another reason as well why I imagine it's good to speak to somebody like you or speak to a local wine shop who will be able to
Yeah.
kind of give you these little bits of insights that you might not be able to find by yourself.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing to note with talking about natural wines, there's been a huge lean natural wines. There's kind of half allure to it, and like I really love it. To half kind of like negative views. No, natural wines is just like pond water, and people get turned off by these misty, weird bottles. That's crazy. But there is a spectrum. Not all natural wine is pond water. There you can go and find some natural wines that are really quite out there and taste more like pond water than perhaps other wines you might have tasted. If that's your vibe, that's your vibe. It's out there for you. But like I say, natural wine. It's not kind of absolutely, it's kind of quite a broad term, let's say. So thinking about less pesticides and herbicides, more natural manures, things like that. This is all good stuff, yeah. This is all thinking about your soils, thinking about your plants, being the grapes, and then into your wine. So it doesn't have to be unfiltered misty pond water. So it's definitely something to give an eye.
This doesn't look anything like pond water to me.
No, exactly.
It smells
Chances
amazing.
are it's going to give you more. There's more flavor because you're not taking anything away. You're not faking anything. This is just those grapes trying to tell you what they taste like.
I smell vanilla. Do I get any points for that?
Yes, you get points for that. There's no wrong answers in wine tasting.
That's gorgeous. And I think that actually is a red wine which everybody would drink, right? That's something which
definitely
your nan and also, your cousin is going to enjoy, and everyone in between.
Exactly. And that is quite a big thing when you're trying to choose from many different palettes, isn't it? Something that everyone will like.
So I'm aware that we're racing towards the end of the session. So the last two things that I wanted to cover were kind of the non-alcoholic choices and the bubbly side of things as well. But just on the non-alcoholic things, I think that more conversations starting to being had about non-alcoholic choices, but I think for a long time they weren't things that maybe people thought about as much as they did when they were choosing their wines or choosing their champagne or prosecco. It was something that was a second thought.
Yeah, well, it kind of on a similar vein, really, to the wine production. You can go and buy, some squash from the supermarket, or you can look at really epic small producers like what we've sent you today, which is made by the Urban Cordial Company, started by Natasha, and they're incredible. They never from concentrate. It's all low sugar, and they're all made from British surplus fruit. So they have saved over 60 tons of surplus fruit since 2018 from being thrown away, and instead made these beautiful cordials instead. So yeah, small production, loads of love that goes into it, and really exciting flavors as well. So things like strawberry and sage, raspberry and rosemary, blackcurrant and lavender, So really exciting, flavors, obviously brilliantly ethically sustainable love that goes into it from the very beginning. So seeking out these sorts of producers can give you an amazing non-alcoholic option, which is on par, let's say, with the wine option as well.
Yeah, I really like that.
Jazz it up with some nice fruit and some mint and some sparkling water or tonic water or whatever, and you've got lovely offering.
They're slightly more grown-up flavors than I think you find with a lot of non-alcoholic alternatives, which are a little bit more sugary, and maybe people don't want to drink them all day. But if you've got something that feels more like a cocktail that people can enjoy and drink all day, I think it's lovely. And that story element as well, which has kind of threaded through everything you've been speaking about. But so much nicer to work with a company who have that story that you can talk to people about on the day.
Yeah, definitely. And you've made great choices because you know the story, so you can be super happy with serving that at your special day.
So I have two. I've got a yellow one and a pink one.
Yeah, so you've got apple, cinnamon, and clove, and then you've got strawberry and sage. So like I say, like really amazing. I love these flavors. Like you say, a bit more grown up, not just kind of going high on the sugar. I mean, for me, I can't drink more than one sort of sugary drink. Feels bad on my teeth.
I'm with you. I'm just pouring myself. I think this is the apple one.
Yeah, apple, cinnamon, and clove.
Apple, cinnamon, and clove, and I'm just mixing it with a little bit of tonic water. But you said that you don't have to use tonic water. You can mix it with lots of different things.
Anything, yeah. Even just still water is fine, or sparkling water. I like tonic water because it has that kind of zingy side to it. Kind of feels a bit more special.
This is amazing. It tastes like Christmas.
Yeah. That's that cinnamon and clove vibe, yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, these are a really nice alternative, and I think that element of them, coming from surplus food waste and giving that kind of circular story to people is a really nice way of thinking.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. They're really, really great. Fantastic labels as well. I love them. The artwork is incredible, which I think always helps. Just stands out. Really good.
I'm gonna have to go and have a look at all of these wines and see their labels afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. There's some really good ones on these. And here's the last point. So, yeah, you asked about bubbly wine. It's a celebration, right? You have to have bubbles.
Somebody has asked for advice for sparkling wine that's not champagne.
Yes. So, okay, so champagne, prosecco, they're the biggest names. But I guess if I had one piece of advice when choosing a bubbly wine for a special day, is think outside the box. Prosecco is so drunk now. Okay, people might like it, but it's almost like overdone. It's getting more expensive. So let's have a look at something else. Champagne. I mean, yes, champagne, great, but there is so much other stuff. So things like a Cremant. And what does that mean? It basically means a French wine made not in the Champagne region from other local grape varieties, but it's made in the same method as Champagne. So it's still got that beautiful lively bubbles, but you might get it from a different part of France. Very often, because it doesn't have that label of it being Champagne, it can be very reasonably priced. So, when of course, when you're buying for a whole load of people, then this is great. Carver is my next idea. Now, I think the idea of Carver is like, oh, that's my grandma drinks. But actually, again, much more affordable. It's a fresh, crisp, gorgeous sparkling wine. So let's not discount it. Another thing, another name, the original sparkling wine wasn't Champagne. It was Blanquette de la Mou from the south of France. So give that one a go, maybe. Try and find something there. Again, local grape varieties down in the south of France.
And it's
so yeah, lots of other options.
An opportunity to go and taste all of these different wines that they might not have had before.
Exactly.
And what you were saying earlier about English sparkling wines, I've had so many of those over the years, and they've been really beautiful and crisp and fresh, and being able to literally go and visit the place where they're grown makes it such a nice experience as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If people are inspired after listening to you and want to find out a little bit more about the wines that we've tasted or some of the non-alcoholic options, where can they find out a little bit more about you?
Well, if you're near to Tooting, then come down and say hi to us in our bar in Tooting Market. Otherwise, you can send us an email or anything like that. We'll talk to you about with that, or find us on Instagram. And yeah, otherwise on our website and things, it's all good.
It's all good.
Otherwise, yeah, check out Urban Cordial Company specifically for those guys.
And thank you so much for sending these testers down. I think I'm going to vote for number 2 as my favourite.
I think that's mine too.
I don't think I've ever tasted anything like that before, but it was still, easy drinking, and I think lots of people would like it, but a slightly surprising flavour, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming to speak to us and for giving me a chance to try all of these delicious wines. I'm not complaining.
Cheers to you guys. Cheers.
So that's the end of this session. I'm going to be back tomorrow with another lineup of incredible sustainable wedding experts. We're going to be talking about everything from what you can use for your wedding breakfast to how you clear up at the end. And the last thing that I have to tell you about is a competition that you could be a part of. So if you're living in North London and you're planning your wedding at the moment, you can enter our competition on the North London Waste Authority's website. The entries close on the 28th of March at midnight, and you could win a planning session from Rachel Capston, who joined us earlier. You could win a tasting selection from Forage and Feast, who are joining us tomorrow. And lastly, you could win some soaps from Marta, who I spoke to just before this. Everything that we recorded today is going to be up on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll be able to find it on the North London Waste Authority's website. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow, and I hope you have a lovely Saturday.